Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Our top stories tonight. New COVID cases in Hong Kong surge to a new 5-month high. Long queues form as people dash back to work following the lowering of the number 8 signal. And the Hang Seng Index gains ground on the back of a fresh mainland stimulus package. Hong Kong's COVID caseload has hit a fresh 5-month high, surpassing 8,000 today. The latest infections included more doctors in a wedding banquet cluster. Janice Low reports.
Today's total of 8,579 COVID cases, including 297 imported ones, was Hong Kong's highest since late March. Health officials also found more doctors were infected after attending a wedding banquet.
In addition to the 6 doctors we mentioned yesterday, we have another 5 doctors infected. They come from the Hong Kong Baptist Hospital, the surgical department, and 2 from the Kwong Wah Hospital, the obstetrics and the gynecology department, and diagnostic radiology department, and also 1 from the Lower Kwai Chung general outpatient department. We're still doing the contact tracings, and there's no patient classified as close contact at the moment.
But Lee said hospital services are not affected as some doctors have cancelled their holidays. The medical and geriatric clinics at Tuen Mun and Pok Oi hospitals have suspended visiting arrangements and admissions after detecting clusters. 9 care homes, including 5 for the elderly, reported cases. 1 was the International Home of Aged. Hospitals have admitted 331 more COVID patients, taking the total to 2,234. 9 patients aged between 70 and 108 were the latest fatalities. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The city returned to normal this morning after being lashed by strong winds overnight as severe tropical storm maam skirted Hong Kong. There was a rush to get back to work when the number 8 signal was lowered and public transport services resumed. Macy Mock reports.
Hopes of a midway holiday were dashed when the number 8 signal was replaced by the number 3 at 9:20 a.m., around 14 hours after it was enforced. People hurried from their homes to get back to work, causing long queues at public transport hubs across the city. At Tai Wai Station, many waited patiently in line. Some were unable to get into crowded trains. This commuter said he had to rush as he did not expect the number 8 to be downgraded that soon. This woman opted to take the train after waiting over 20 minutes for a bus. In Hong Kong, there was a long queue for buses to Hong Kong Island. Many buses were jam-packed. At least 10 departing flights were cancelled. Many people were relieved that severe tropical storm maam bypassed the city. There had been fears that it would have slammed Hong Kong head-on.
With the actual track a little bit to the west of the original forecast track, actually the maam is a little bit further away from Hong Kong. In fact, maam was closest to Hong Kong at 3 to 4 a.m. early this morning when it skirted at about 190 kilometers to the southwest of Hong Kong.
Wet markets reopened at noon, but only few people turned up in the first few hours. This restaurant opened its doors, but the operator said some items on the menu were not available because the storm delayed the delivery of ingredients. Morning schools and kindergartens were closed, but afternoon schools operated normally. Venues like Ocean Park and the M+ Museum reopened in the afternoon as life in the city went back to business after the second number 8 of the year was lifted. All storm signals were lowered just after 4 p.m. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Severe tropical storm Maam did little damage as it swept past the city. A housing estate by the sea, which was severely hit by previous storms, escaped. This time, Janice Low reports.
Hang Seng and Taiwan usually feels the wrath of typhoons. But severe tropical storm Maam was relatively quiet after midnight. There was no heavy rain, although trees swayed when the area was hit by winds at around 2 in the morning. The scene remained the same after the city welcomed the sunrise. Although the storm whipped up occasional strong waves, they were only about 1 meter high when they splashed onto Hang Seng's promenade. That enabled the residents to resume their morning exercise, while janitors were busy cleaning. It was not the first time that this man has witnessed big waves at Hang Seng. But he said the winds from Maam were weaker, although he thought the sea level was higher. However, the water level couldn't be compared to that in Tai O, where it reached 2.9 meters above chart datum. Residents had to take temporary stairs set up by the civil aid service workers after walking down a bridge to reach another street. This resident said there were only occasional strong winds and that it remained relatively calm during the night. Some other places in the city felt the brunt of the storm. At least 4 trees were toppled by the force of the winds, and heavy rain caused floods. 1 person was injured during the storm and was sent to hospital. Janice Low, HKIBC.
A man has lost his bid to appeal against his conviction for rioting and punching a policeman during protests in 2019. The Court of Appeal rejected claims that the man was trying to protect himself. Maisie Mock reports.
Sham Hyu-leun was sentenced to 4 years in jail after he was convicted of rioting outside the besieged police headquarters in Wan Chai in June 2019. He was also found guilty of assaulting a plainclothes police officer who was trying to escape from anti-government protesters. Sham has been released, but while in jail, he filed an appeal against his rioting and common assault convictions. His lawyer said the judges should not rule out that Sham attacked the police officer to defend himself or protect other people, and that there was no supporting evidence that it was his intention to attack. The lawyer added that the defendant should not have been convicted of rioting and common assault at the same time. A 3-judge panel in the Court of Appeal rejected the self-defense claim. The judgment stated that a video showed the policeman's hands were intertwined with other protesters and Sham had no need to punch the officer. The judges also rejected the argument that Sham was punished twice for the same action, stating the case started with the defendant's attack. Sham's bid to appeal was dismissed. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Police Chief Pete Arredondo, who was accused of failing to stop a massacre of school children in the U.S. town of Uvalde, has been sacked just before the start of a school board meeting. 19 children and 2 teachers were shot dead by a teenager in May.
We have just been told that Mr. Arredondo is not going to be here because he doesn't feel safe. And I'm going to sit here and say that nobody has threatened him. That's all I'm going to say on that. So for him to not be here and actually to face the consequences to his actions, exactly.
If it was one of your children, heads would be rolling right now. But because it's not, you don't care. You are not going to sweep this under the rug. You're not. All of you are accountable.
Arredondo's lawyers published a 17-page letter denying their client was responsible for botched rescue efforts throughout the incident. The force has been facing harsh criticism as investigations reveal more information, including that responding officers had stood around for over an hour before confronting the gunman. The Hong Kong stock market was forced to operate only in the afternoon because of the storm. But despite the shortened session, the Hang Seng Index jumped 3.6% to close at a 4-month high. A stimulus package unveiled by China boosted business sentiment. The tech jumped 6%, with JD.com outperforming as it soared 11%. Alibaba and Meituan each gained over 8%. Financials were also in favor, with insurer Ping An adding over 5%. Coal-related stocks advanced. Yanzhou coal mining rose over 9% as the mainland turned to coal-fired energy after hydropower supplies dried up because of a heat wave. Mainland stocks were also given a boost by Beijing's latest stimulus package. The infrastructure, housing, energy, and business sectors are expected to benefit from the initiative, worth 1 trillion yuan. In a further move to spur China's sluggish economy, the State Council unveiled 19 new policies to counter the COVID-induced damage, a deepening property crisis, and a power shortage triggered by unprecedented droughts. State media said Premier Li Keqiang vowed to make use of what's available in the toolbox to maintain economic development and achieve the best results. These include injecting another 300 billion yuan into a fund to enable policy banks to invest in infrastructure projects. That's on top of 300 billion yuan announced in June. Local governments were urged to make good use of an additional 500 billion yuan in special bonds this year. On the property market, local governments will be allowed to use specific credit policies flexibly to support housing demand and improve quality. Private business gets a helping hand, with local governments encouraged to set up so-called risk compensation funds to provide loans. As severe droughts continue to impact on industrial operations and living conditions, state-run power generation companies will be allowed to raise 200 billion yuan through bonds to ensure energy supply. Subsidies worth 10 billion yuan will be offered to the agricultural sector. But economists regard the measures as conservative and forecast that China will not be able to meet its full-year growth targets. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed up nearly 700 points. Top 10 active stocks: Tencent up $15, Meituan up $13.20, JD.com up $24.40. Tracker Found up 70 cents, Ping An up $2.35. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 7.82, British pound at 9.28, and Australian dollar at 5.47. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently up 22 points. Hong Kong's trade performance worsened last month, with drops in both imports and exports. The value of exports declined 8.9% from a year earlier to almost $380 billion. Imports retreated by 9.9% to $407 billion. Exports to the mainland, the United States, and the European Union kept falling amid a global slowdown and disruptions to land transportation. outward shipments are expected to weaken further because of high inflation and rising interest rates abroad, along with geopolitical tensions and supply chain disruptions. On to the weather now. The showers will continue tomorrow, but there will also be sunny in intervals. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees, even hotter on Sunday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good evening.